So my sister and her husband are living with me temporarily. So I agreed to let them stay with my dogs and me. I own a nice bungalow and it's just my dogs and me. It's a little crowded, but I can deal. I have a couple of little dogs and I like to make them raw food. It's healthy for them and I like knowing what they eat. I use cheap ground meat and I mix in chopped up vegetables, seeds, and organ meat. Also, I mix in their doggy vitamins. I make up big batches whenever I find ground meat at a good price. Then I make patties out of the mix and freeze them. At night, I take out a couple of patties and leave them in the fridge to thaw out for the next day's food. When I was out yesterday, my brother-in-law saw the hamburgers in my fridge and decided to grill them up and eat them. When I got home, I went to feed my dogs, but the food was obviously not there. So I asked my sister if she had fed my dogs while I was out. She said that her husband had eaten the burgers in the fridge. I giggled and said, "Oops, I guess I need to thaw out more." He heard me and said that they tasted off anyway. I told him the reason they tasted off was that they were dog food. He started dry heaving and saying he was going to puke. He yelled at me for keeping the dog food around people's food. I yelled back that he was a guest and that while he was welcome to anything in the house, perhaps it would be best if he asked before he ate my food. He and my sister are angry that I didn't label my dog food. I'm kind of angry that he complained. Yes, I would be a little grossed out too, but it's just funny. He isn't hurt or anything. There's nothing that isn't edible by humans in the food that I make. I wouldn't eat it myself, of course. Part of the reason he's angry is that he says I took it lightly. All I did was joke that he would have a nice shiny coat. So, am I the idiot? LOL, not the idiot. Check on him in 3 days. Stand behind him and pet his hair and say something like, "Yes, those omega-3s are helping." I also feed raw patties. If someone was going to be stupid enough to eat random food in my fridge, oh well. It's probably healthier than what he regularly eats anyway. Agree. This is hilarious. Even if you have a you can eat whatever policy, I will never just grill up obviously prepped burger patties from my host's fridge. That's impolite to me because someone who's not you prepared them and meant to eat them, and then you just come in and decide to grill them up without asking? It's just rude. But the fact that it was meant for the dogs is hilarious and should be a lesson learned. LOL. As for labeling your dog food, well, your house is not set up as a guest house, and how you deal with the contents of your fridge is your business. You're a nice person for housing your sister and her husband. At least they should be grateful for that. Nobody died, but your dogs did have to wait for their next meal. Brother-in-law is overreacting. It wasn't intentional on your part, and it is funny. Maybe get brother-in-law a new squeaky toy to smooth things over. Background. My younger sister and I were under 5 when our parents divorced. 2 years later, our mom was in a horrific car accident that changed our lives forever. Unfortunately, my father had already married again at the time, and they made the decision, him and his wife, to have her take over and raise us as their own children together, even though my mom did nothing wrong and was technically still alive, just critically ill. My mom was left permanently disabled by her injuries, and she was in the hospital for almost a year and spent the further 3-ish years in rehabilitation learning how to function again. During all of this, my sister and I were not allowed to see or speak with our mom, and during this time, my sister decided that my father's wife was her real mother and that my mom was just Dad's ex-wife, which was encouraged by him and his wife. Mom was able to get a place where she could ask the court for time with us. It started out supervised because of her disability and the time it had been since we had seen her, but the damage was done between my sister and her. My sister didn't want to spend time with her. She didn't want her called Mom. She would yell at me for hugging Mom and calling her Mom, and would say that I was hurting our mom. The custody situation was fought back against by my father and his wife, who said Mom's place in our lives interrupted our stability and family dynamic. In the end, it was decided that it was in my best interest to see my mom and have a relationship with her, but that it was in my sister's best interest not to, and to have things go back to the way they were, no contact with Mom, for her. Mom was heartbroken, and my father was furious that Mom would get access to me. Today, I'm 18, in my senior year of high school, and I now live with my mom and have cut off my father and his wife. I still talk to my sister, but our relationship is very strained. We no longer feel like sisters. We almost feel like step-siblings because we no longer claim the same parents. That includes my father. She's talked about graduation and how she wants to be there, but she doesn't want to go with mom. She wants her parents there. I don't want them there. I don't want them in my life at all. She said she couldn't come otherwise. I told her I would not invite her parents just to have her there. I could hear her cry after I said it, and she was mad at me for picking mom over my real family. I feel bad. Despite how messed up this is, I still love my sister. Even though I'm not sure we can ever be close again, I don't want to hurt her. Am I the idiot? That is such a crappy situation. If your mom had left you by choice, I could maybe see your sister's side, but it was an accident. Not the idiot, but do try to cut your sister some slack and maintain a relationship with her because she is only 15 and might see things differently and change her mind once she matures. However, cutting out your father and his wife is entirely your choice and justified. If they didn't try to pretend as your mom died, none of this would have happened, and you could have still had a functioning family. I'm just wondering how happy they would feel if your mom hadn't recovered. Monsters. They intentionally brainwashed a young, impressionable child so they wouldn't have to deal with the inconvenience of her mother. OP, it looks like she won't attend your graduation, and that sucks, but I wouldn't throw in the towel on your relationship with your sister yet. None of this is her fault. I disagree. Sister knows the truth. She just doesn't care about it. It's not her truth. Please don't feel bad about this. You're not hurting her. She's hurting you. She knows you're no contact with your dad and stepmom. She knows you're with your mother, yet she's the one who's trying to put down the rules for your own graduation. Do not feel bad. She's chosen her path. My dad died when I was 7 years old. He was my favorite person, my mom's favorite person at the time, and I kind of think he was the person who would complement our personalities enough for us to be super close. Even as a little kid, I knew that. It broke the two of us when he died, but then she found someone else. She found Luke. She married Luke 2 years later, and he became her person. Luke, upon realizing my dad had been the parent I was closest to, tried to fill that space and was unwilling to listen when I said that space was reserved for my dad. It caused some tension. Over time, I let some things go. They would call themselves my parent or my mom and dad. I always called him Luke. I always told people close to me about my dad and would make sure it was known Luke was not my dad. Now that I'm several years out of their house, our relationship is amicable but not close. I don't hate them, but my mom and I still don't mesh well, and Luke still wants to fill that role my dad had, and I still don't want him to. Ever since I got engaged, my mom has been more present. She's told me how she always dreamed of this day, etc. Over time, she brought up how she and Luke couldn't wait to see him walk me down the aisle or give me my father-daughter dance, and how they were excited to be mom and dad of the bride. Of course, I told her none of that was happening. She told me it was always her dream, though. From the time she found out she was expecting a girl, she couldn't wait to watch me on my dad's arm and in my dad's arms for a dance. I told her that was possible when dad was alive, but not when he was gone. She told me it was still possible, that there was still my dad, Luke, who deserved it. They both did. I told her I was walking with my fiancé and no father-daughter dance would happen. I told her that he would not be listed as the father of the bride anywhere because he's not my father. I ended up telling her to leave, and I went back to less contact. Then my mom showed up unannounced and started to tell me about this dream again and what it meant to her. And I told her without hesitation that her dream stopped being possible when my dad died because he wasn't here to do that stuff, and that Luke was never going to be filling my dad's role for me. I told her she might be able to switch them out easily, but I was not. She left in tears, telling me I had punished her for moving on and punished my dad for not being Cal, my dad, that she and my dad deserved better than that, and I was spiteful. Am I the idiot? Edit. Luke cut up cards, I had made and given my dad for Father's Day that my dad had kept safe before he died. Auntie cut up the back and left the front, and then turned them into a collage and acted like they were cards I had given him. When he and my mom brought out my birth certificate for something, he told me he couldn't wait to see his name instead of the old husband. He told me my dad had done nothing special and that he could do what my dad had done for my mom and me, but better. My mom just erased my dad and added Luke, then expected me to do the same. She even went as far as taking photo frames with stuff like our family or dad and daughter and replacing them with photos that included Luke instead of my dad. She also told me more than once that Luke was our favorite new person, or would say, Dad's our favorite person like always, and it was always about Luke. Not the idiot. You don't consider Luke as your father, period. Your mom and Luke should accept it once and for all, and your mom should also cease her emotional blackmailing. Maybe if Luke hadn't tried to replace your dad, he'd be in much better standing with you. Even if it was so, it is all down to your decision. Be ready for the flying monkeys to come at you about how you're unreasonable, etc. I'd be ready to block the lot. Yeah, maybe if he hadn't stumped on the feelings of a grieving 9-year-old, I'd have more respect for him. Yeesh, those edits make my heart hurt. I would reconsider inviting him and the mother as well. Luke wanted a ready-made family and didn't care what kind of damage he was doing to his daughter. Mom is the biggest idiot here. Instead of helping her child grieve the loss of their favorite person, she just tried to shove any male into that spot. I don't think anything OP says will drive those points home for either of them. They think they're in the right. If mommy can't drop it, it might be time to go no contact. Long story short, my daughter-in-law has severe morning sickness, also known as hyperemesis gravidarum, HG, and I'm tasked with her caregiving. It is a horrible sickness, and I feel extremely sorry for my daughter-in-law. When my daughter-in-law was 3 months along, my son asked if my husband and I could take her in and care for her because he felt disrupted at work and couldn't sleep well. I immediately obliged and was happy to help because my daughter-in-law's parents are overseas. Unfortunately, my daughter-in-law has mild paranoia that stems from her HG and thus sometimes feels unsafe and unfamiliar in our house and often shouts to see my son or gets really angry. I don't fault her for those things because I know she can't help it. I accompany my daughter-in-law to her appointments and stay by her side throughout when she's having severe nausea. I also sleep beside her for the night because I'm worried sick if she'd feel dizzy and fall while getting up in the night for a pee. We have spoken to her gynecologist, and my daughter-in-law is now on antipsychotics, which makes her feel better, but she still has these bouts of anxiety and often asks for my son. Right now, my son visits every Friday and leaves on Sunday mornings. I've asked my son to call her often, but he gets into arguments with me, saying he doesn't have time, even though he finishes work latest by 6. Calling her every day would help my daughter-in-law a lot. Besides that, I think having a familiar face would help. So 3 days ago, I asked my son if daughter-in-law's parents could move over from their home country for the time being and stay over at his house. My son says that that would be an inconvenience and he'd have to pay for their living expenses, so I countered that I would chip in a bit. I was also absolutely shocked to find out that my son and daughter-in-law minimized her issue and were lying to her parents that everything was still manageable. My son said it was not happening and that he'd be unable to function properly with everyone in the house. I got very frustrated and called daughter-in-law's parents and told them the reality of the situation. They were very disappointed, but also concerned and eager to help out. I confronted my son after the call, and he's extremely angry with his father and me. He needs to be more involved and empathetic because once the baby arrives, it's only going to be worse. And we're getting old as well, and I can't be there every step of the way. My husband assured me that I made the right decision, but my son is pretty bothered by it and thinks I'm selfish and is just using this as an excuse to not take care of daughter-in-law, even though I've been here for her more than him. Daughter-in-law's parents would be arriving in a week, so I'm extremely grateful for that, but I still feel guilty if this was the right way to go about it. Wow! Your son kicked his wife out of the house during her pregnancy because of a medical issue and only visits her on the weekends? He needs to get his head out of his butt because we all know new parents don't get sleep or quiet time. This is nothing but the disruption starting a few months early. That cannot be real. My word, you are not the idiot. You and your husband sound pretty great for helping her so much. Your son, on the other hand, is a major idiot and insults to trees. Sorry, but wow on every level. He's a selfish individual. I seriously worry he'll dump the baby on his parents too. It's just too much work, too distracting, too stressful. Oh well, I'll regularly visit for a couple of hours every few months. How could he be away from his wife this much if he truly loved her? Quite honestly, your daughter-in-law should move back with her parents. Your son is behaving like a worthless idiot, and I don't see him treating his child any better than his pregnant wife. Update. Thank you to everyone who's responded. I feel overwhelmed by how much worse this situation could be. As a mother to my son and daughter-in-law, I feel deeply ashamed and worried about how callously my son behaved. I plan to sit him down and talk to him and mention some issues that people have brought up, including how he plans to take care of the baby if daughter-in-law is recovering and still mentally unwell, and whether his actions are because of stress or if he's really neglectful. If he's become neglectful, I will support my daughter-in-law in choosing what's best for her. My daughter-in-law would always have my unhindered support regardless, and she'll be staying with me and well cared for until her parents arrive, and afterward if they need a break. I need to reflect and question my son on why he's behaving this way and resolve it as necessary. Thank you once again. Days ago, I, stay-at-home mom with 3, was doing laundry when my husband, the breadwinner, who works as a pilot, asked if I could iron his uniform before his shift. I didn't say yes because I was busy. Laundry, then kids' homework, then cooking, etc. I said I might not find the time to do it. He turned around and walked away, completely ignoring what I was saying. An hour later, he came downstairs freaking out, asking why I didn't iron his uniform when he asked me to. I told him I was busy and reminded him of how I didn't say yes to his request. He blew up, saying that I obviously don't care about him displaying professionalism at work. It's just a uniform. It's not like it was dirty, just needed some ironing. He lectured me about how his work is important and that although I'm a stay-at-home mom, I still should make his job a priority. He decided to miss his shift as a way to teach me a lesson and show me how my lack of cooperation and my refusal to help him out could affect the money that kept coming in. I called him insane for missing the shift, and he got offended and called me a hypocrite for calling him insane and acting all surprised when it was me who caused this situation to happen. I mean, I could have taken some time for my chores to iron his uniform, but I still thought his reaction was a bit much. Am I the idiot? Attention passengers of Flight 4033. Unfortunately, your flight has been canceled because your pilot, while perfectly capable of operating a highly complex 450-ton machine, was not able to iron his shirt and therefore had to stay home to sulk. Our sincere apologies for the inconvenience. Not the idiot. Offer to call his boss to apologize and explain why he missed his shift personally. He didn't go to work to teach you a lesson for not ironing his uniform. He's petty enough to risk his family's well-being over an ironed shirt. I'm not sure how comfortable I would feel with my life in the hands of someone that petty. For me, anytime an adult says that they are or they want to teach a lesson to another adult is a massive red flag and causes you to distance yourself away from them, if not to leave altogether. It betrays a manipulative mindset where they think they have the right to try and control other people's actions.